Hello and welcome to this Italia Pass Ready for Rome webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shelly Ruel and I am the community manager at Italia Pass. And I'm joined today by my colleague Sofia Bragaglia, who is an Italia Pass Italy experience specialist. I've lived in Italy for over 20 years. I've lived in Rome the whole time. And Sophia is actually from Italy. So between the both of us, we have a lot of expertise about living here, but also for you for visiting here that we want to share with you today. So we're glad that you're here. To get started, I just want to go really quickly into what is Italia Pass because many of you are probably here because you bought a ticket with Italia Rail and you may not know what Italia Pass is. So just really quickly, just to kind of give you a picture of where we're coming from, there's a family of brands that are called the Italia brands. So there's a rail, tours, drive, hotels, and now Pass. So this company, the Italia brands, have been working with travelers to Italy for many, many years, since 1987, in fact. And our CEO wanted to create a program that would help his customers to have the best trip to Italy ever. And so that's how Italia Pass came about. It's actually a membership benefits program. It's the only one of its kind for Italy. It's a membership benefits pass that costs $149 and it gives you over $650 in value for your trip to Italy. So that's where we're coming from. That's what Italia Pass is. It's also a free community. That's the community that I manage. And so throughout today's presentation, as we're giving you information about Rome, we'll also be telling you a few of the benefits of an Italia Pass, just in case it's something you might want to add to your Italy trip, if you think that it would help and enhance the value and savings for your trip. So what are we going to cover today? Here's a quick bullet list of the things that we're going to cover. The information that we're going to present takes about a half an hour. And then at the end, we'll have a live Q&A. So the first thing we're going to tackle is arrival at FCO, that's Fiumicino Airport, and how to get into the city because the airport's about a half an hour outside of the city center. We'll talk about our lounge at Rome's Termini Station in case that's something you want to take advantage of. I'll tell you a little bit about how to get around the city on public transport and also about restaurants, some local customs, how to avoid some very typical tourist traps. We'll talk a little bit about how you can get complimentary access to some of the most iconic monuments, museums, and how you can get $100 off of an Italia Tours experience. And then I'll close out with a couple more of my favorite local tips and we'll go right into the live Q&A. The Q&A is going to be chat-based. So there's an icon on the bottom of your screen, like a chat, a Q&A chat. At any time, you can type a question in there and we'll tackle those live at the end. We allow 15 minutes, but don't worry if we don't get around to all the questions. I will tackle those offline and post the answers in the community and you'll get a link to that post. So you'll definitely get your answer whether we're able to do it live or offline. So I'm going to pass it over to Sophia now to get started, and she's going to talk to you about arriving at the airport and how to get into the city from there.
Thank you, Shelly, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So yeah, we can get started. Let's see, now you've landed at FCO Airport, and you'll have a few options to get to the center of Rome. As you see on the slide, they're all indicated in the terminal, so it's fairly easy to navigate. The first option that we have, of course, is the train station. To reach Roma Termini, there are two types of trains that you can take. The first one is called Leonardo Express. It's a direct train that goes to Termini. Termini is the main station in Rome, by the way. And it's a non-stop train that goes there. It's $16 on Italia Rail. And the second type is, it doesn't really have a name. It's a regional train. It's one of the local trains that you will find roaming through Italy. These regional trains get to smaller stations within Rome, named Trastevere and Ostiense. They're $10 on Italia Rail. All three are still considered regional trains. There's not a huge difference between the three. It just really depends on where you're trying to get into the city. If you're traveling to another city after going to Rome right away, then Termini will be the one. Otherwise, it may depend on where your hotel is or, stuff like that. We generally get a lot of questions of whether you should book in advance for the tickets or not. I do recommend booking before your arrival, especially if you're traveling during high season. That would be now, essentially. It's usually May to early October. During this period, the queues can get very long, the servers can get overwhelmed, So just to make sure that everything goes smoothly, I would recommend booking the tickets in advance. However, just a quick note, if you book the Leonardo Express tickets, the nonstop train, the tickets for that type of train are time specific. I believe they only allow for, I want to say 90 minutes of delay. So, just make sure that you have, exactly when you're landing at the FCO and you can calculate when you'll be on the train. Um, Generally speaking, I would say that's usually around an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours after landing, because of course you'll have to perhaps get your luggage or go through customs. So I usually recommend booking at least, yeah, 2 hours after your scheduled time of arrival, time of landing. And definitely, again, if you're planning on leaving Rome on that same day, no trains out of Rome Termini within 3 hours of arrival. Again, this is for the luggage, customs. Sometimes there's some delays, unforeseen events with airports. Traveling can be unpredictable, so you might want to have that window to make sure that you're not rushing to get on the train. You also might want to try and arrive at the train station, especially Termini, I would say 20 minutes before your train is supposed to depart, just because the station is a bit big, so it can take a while to, find your way around. So yeah, that's it for trains. The other options are taxis that you can take outside the terminal. They have a fixed rate of 55 euros. Or there's also shuttle buses and private transfers that we offer. Those we can actually help you book. And it's exactly as it sounds. It's a private transfer that takes you directly from the airport to either your accommodation in Rome or to the train station if you're trying to get there. It's bookable both on italiatours.com, or if you decide to reach out to us through the members' customer service email address, we'll be happy to set one up for you. Now, should I rent a car? This is a question that comes up a lot, and there's no universal answer, but I'll try to give you some tips depending on what your trip is looking like. I would say a general rule of thumb is if you know that you're going to be exploring some remote areas of Italy, some, popular ones may be the Amalfi Coast or the Tuscan countryside. In this case, renting a car can be a great option. However, if you're only going to be visiting the major cities, let's say you'll be in Florence, Venice, Rome, and you're planning on staying within the city walls or the city center, I wouldn't rent a car. Mostly because the best way to navigate in between cities, especially major cities, is usually by train. There's high-speed trains that connect most of Italy, so they tend to be the most comfortable option. And there tend to be very strict car rules inside the city that can, make parking tricky. And so there are some areas that are off limits. Um, these rules are tricky for Italians as well, for locals. So yeah, just would not recommend that. And that's if you're staying inside the city. Regardless of what you decide to do, if you do decide to rent a car, you can do so on our platform, Italia Drive. And as a member, you would benefit from a $10 discount that you can redeem after booking by contacting us. Another perk of being a member is, of course, access to our Italia Pass lounge. This lounge is located inside the Rome Termini station, which I mentioned before. It's a great place to hang out if you have some free time before boarding a train or if you're waiting for your hotel check-in time. You can just come and, just relax. We have free Wi-Fi, espresso, refreshments. We offer free luggage storage, both for carry-ons or larger bags. We just ask that you book your visit in advance, and if you have any luggage, that you drop it off and pick it up within opening hours, because of course we have some lovely hosts that will welcome you and that are looking over your belongings. So it's important that we know if and when you're coming to visit. And now I can hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport within the city.
Okay, thanks. So ATTAC is the name of the company that handles public transport here in Rome. There are three main ways of public transport: buses, metro, which is the underground, and it only has two lines that cross in the middle at Termini Station. So it's a very easy system to navigate. And there's also a couple of trams, but as a visitor, you may not use those so much because they're more on the kind of outside of the main tourist areas, with the exception of Tram 8, which goes right down into near Piazza Venezia. Tickets are €1.50, and they're good for 100 minutes of unlimited rides. The only exception to that is that you can only board the subway for one ride. So once you enter the subway, ride as long as you want, but once you exit, that ticket's no longer good for a subway ride, but it's still good for as many minutes as you have left on that ticket. Tap and Go is a convenient system to buy a ticket. You just use your contactless payment method to tap at the turnstiles when you're going into the underground. And most buses also have these boxes where you can tap your card to pay for your ticket. The only thing about that is that you have to have a separate payment method for each rider. So just make sure that you are using a different card because that counts as your ticket. So you can't have multiple tickets on one payment method. Tickets are called biglietto, and if you want to purchase a ticket or two to have in your wallet or in your purse in case there's no tap and go method on the buses, you can purchase those at machines that are in the subway stations, or you can purchase those at the tobacconists, which are called tabaccheria. Those are easy to locate. They'll have a sign of a T, the letter T over the door, or newsstands, which are throughout the city. So that's an easy way to find paper tickets, which will need to be validated the first method of public transport that you board. So if you're riding the subway, you'll put the ticket in at the turnstile and it will validate it and spit it back out. Same goes for the buses. There's little machines on the buses to validate your ticket. Bus 64 is a good bus route for visitors to the city because it goes from the main train station all the way across the city to the Vatican. One thing I would caution you about Bus 64 is that because it's so popular with tourists, it sometimes can be a magnet for pickpockets, especially if it's super crowded. I don't want to worry anybody about pickpocketing. If you're very vigilant about your belongings, you shouldn't have any trouble with pickpockets. They go for the distracted tourists. So if you make sure that you know where your purse is, your wallet is, you're aware of your surroundings, aware of your belongings, you won't be a target. But I do caution people, especially on crowded buses like this particular one, and in any areas where there's going to be big tourist crowds, where you might be elbow to elbow or jostled. That's a good place where pickpockets can work because you may not feel that they're trying to steal your wallet. So not to worry you, but just to keep aware, like you would in any big city throughout the world. Now on to some tips about eating out. Something that might be a little bit different here if you've never visited Rome or Italy is that we tend to eat a little bit later than, say, for example, in the United States. Lunch is around 1 or 1:30 is when it starts, and dinner is around 8 or 8:30. And the reason I mention that is because if you want to go to a very local restaurant, the kitchen might not be open before that. There are other restaurants that are open throughout the day, but a lot of those will cater more to tourists. So the local places are probably going to be a little bit later than you're used to, perhaps. The check is called il conto, and the reason I put this here is because they won't deliver your check unless you ask for it because they want to respect your time at the table. It's like a cultural thing when you're with friends and family. They don't want to feel like you're rushed. So do ask for the check when you're ready because they won't bring it automatically in most cases to the table. Tipping is not necessary here in Rome. The wait staff makes a living wage. They're paid a regular salary. They do not work for tips. So tipping is not a custom here. So do not feel like you need to leave a tip. Certainly there is no 20% or percentage tip that is not the local custom. Most of my local friends do not leave tips at restaurants. If you enjoyed your meal and want to leave a courtesy tip, you could leave maybe €1 per person, but it's certainly not necessary. A couple of tourist traps that you might encounter to be aware of. So gelato, I hope you enjoy our delicious gelato, but be aware of the gelato that looks like that photo. When it's super overflowing from the tubs like that, it's because they've whipped a lot of air into it to make it look kind of showy, but that's not really the most artisanal or like homemade type of gelato. And even if it has really bright colors, that's usually artificial food coloring. So kind of avoid those if you can. And also at restaurants, if you see pictures on the menu, you can know that that's a tourist restaurant. Or if you see people out front that I like to call promoters trying to usher people inside, that's also a tip off that they're catering to tourists and not locals. It's not that you'll have a terrible meal there, but if you want something really authentic, you're best to avoid these types of places. I'm going to send a reference list after this webinar to everyone who registered, and it will have some suggestions on there for local places to eat that are not so touristy. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Sophia to talk about getting into the sites.
Thank you, Shelley. So yeah, now for all the exciting sites you'll get to see during your stay in Rome. First, let's start from the Colosseum, of course. ItaliaPass members get one free tour of the Colosseum, featuring exclusive access through the arena floor, to the arena floor, sorry, through the iconic Gladiators Gate. So of course, if you're in Rome, you have to visit the Colosseum at least once. If you've already been, I would still visit. It's free. It's there and it's beautiful, so why not? And something that's a bit newer is for our members, they also get complimentary access to the Pantheon, which is a little less popular, I would say, than the Colosseum, but just as beautiful. So I would definitely 100% recommend visiting if you have enough time. Of course, we also offer other tours within the city. We offer guided tours of the Vatican, walking tours of the rest of Rome. The walking tours usually include places like Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, of course. And we also have a tour bundle that includes all of these things. It includes the Colosseum, Vatican, and the walking tour, which is called the Rome Tour Pass. We usually recommend it for people who have 2 or 3 days to spend in Rome. Definitely at least 2 full days, because you will need about that time to cover all of the sites. But even if you're staying a few days longer, it can be the perfect fit if you're trying to cover the highlights, with uh, one bundle for the tours. Regardless of which ones you decide to choose, of course, as a member, you will get access to $100 off of your first tour order, and 10% off of any subsequent tours. You can book all of these experiences on Italia Tours, and you can always email us if you have any questions. If you need more information about specific tours, we're always happy to help. One additional tip that I would give you is, if you're planning on traveling, especially if you're planning on traveling during high season, definitely try to lock these in as soon as you can. If um, as soon as you know exactly in which days you'll be in Rome and you really want to see something like especially the Vatican, it sells out really fast. So try to book a few weeks in advance, if possible, even a few months. And yeah, we struggle a lot with last minute bookings, so just if you really want to see something, make sure you have a reservation before. Another thing that we get asked about a lot is the dress code. The general rule for that is if you'd like to visit the Vatican or any major basilicas or churches, definitely wear clothes that'll cover your shoulders and knees. This is especially true of the Vatican, but I would say it's a general rule for most churches in Rome, and especially if you go to the countryside, that's very important. Um, Anything else, if you're visiting the Colosseum, the Pantheon, or any other attraction, there's no specific dress code. You can dress. I would recommend dressing comfortably, of course, but you can wear pretty much anything you want. Um, However, you also, for the Vatican and Colosseum specifically, and some of the museums, you won't be able to bring in large backpacks or strollers. So definitely make sure that you have something smaller like a crossbody bag, which might be more convenient in this situation. We also wanted to mention a special offer that we currently have, where we'll give you free access to a special Vatican City edition of Italy Magazine. Italy Magazine is another one of our partner brands. It's a magazine that's dedicated to all things Italy. And this specific edition will give you insider tips into visiting some iconic landmarks within the Vatican during this year. This year is the Jubilee, so it's a very important, very special year. And so we decided to craft this issue, which is aimed for, first-time visitors, but also anyone who would like a refresher after they've already been to the Vatican and plan on visiting again. So yeah, it fits anyone who's gonna go this year, essentially, and it's super easy to get. So to get access, you'll just have to fill out a brief survey in the community, which is where you'll find all the information. And now back to Shelley for some local tips.
Thank you. So, a couple of last local tips before we open it to questions. In Rome, there are these water fountains called Nazzoni. That means big nose because it refers to the spigot. These water fountains, like you see in the photo, the water's coming out continuously. It comes out really cold. So, if you have a reusable water bottle, you can refill it using these fountains. So, you don't have to buy plastic bottles. They're very convenient. And in my resources list that I'm going to send to everyone who registered for this webinar, and that is also available at the ItaliaPass community at any time you want to view it, I will put the link for a smartphone app that the local water utility has released, and it actually water fountains throughout the city, so that especially now in high season when it's really hot in the summer, you can know where you're getting your next water refill and you don't have to spend money or waste plastic to have water as you're walking around the city. Secondly, I love to encourage people to have an aperitivo, which you may have heard about or seen. This drink that you see in the photo on the right-hand side is the Aperol Spritz. It's a very iconic pre-dinner drink. This is a pre-dinner custom. It starts around 6 or 6:30. The photo that I've shared here is at Meccanismo. That's a bar in Trastevere. I will have the link for that just because I particularly like this place because you can see what an abundant variety of little snacks you get. So it's like a snack and a drink before dinner. So it's a local cultural custom. The Aperol Spritz and a lot of the other drinks have just a small amount of alcohol, but you don't have to get a drink with alcohol in it. You could simply get a Coca-Cola or a lemon soda or whatever, and just make a pre-dinner drink and chat before you head along to dinner. That's something typical in Italy, and you can try that out. So at this point, that wraps up the informational part of our webinar. Like I said, I'm going to email out links to the resources that I spoke about, a recap of the Q&A we're about to hold, and I'll also send out a link to a recording of this webinar if you joined late or want to go back and review any of it. You'll get that within the next 24 hours. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Sophia and I can go to the Q&A. If you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A chat box and we'll answer it live. So the first question is, does Google Maps routes and buses have real-time updates? Meaning, can we use Google Maps and we'll get how far is the next bus? That is a fantastic question. So I actually use Google Maps with the public transport option. It's so, I would say. There's two things here. Public transport in Rome is not reliable in terms of schedule, especially compared to other large European cities that tend to run more to the minute. Public transport in Rome is unpredictable. So Google tries to predict, but sometimes it's not 100% accurate. So don't set your watch by it, but it will give you a good general idea. In particular, it's going to give you a very good idea of traffic times and travel times. It's not going to maybe hit right on in terms of when that bus is going to pull up. I definitely would not stake money on if it says it's showing up at 4:15. You can wait a lot, but Google will give you several different options a lot of times. And so if one option isn't coming, the bus isn't coming, there's usually something nearby. Rome is a big city, so there's usually an alternate route. But certainly if you have like an event scheduled, a restaurant reservation, a concert, or anything that requires that you be on time, I certainly would not rely on public transport in Rome. That is never a good bet. Unfortunately, I would take a taxi or an Uber. Those are your best bets if you have to be to the minute somewhere. If you've got time to spare and you can go the Roman way, then you can just, go with the flow. And when the bus comes, it comes. But yeah, Google's generally pretty reliable, but I wouldn't count on it 100%. Alex is asking to share the link for this one-day bundle tour. I will definitely do that in the resources that I send out after. I believe you're referring to the Rome Pass that Sophia talked about, so we'll definitely include that. Oh, this is a good one too. What do we do if we get our passport stolen or some phone numbers for the police? I can include that in the Q&A wrap up. If you're a US citizen, or I suppose any country citizen, generally if you get your passport stolen, you're going to want to go to the local embassy and they will issue you an emergency passport so that you can travel. So if you're a US citizen, that's what you would do. And so you would just look up your local embassy. And so I don't know if you would need to call the police here locally, but it would probably depend on what you need for canceling your bank cards and things like that. So, but that's good to be having a precaution. I would recommend keeping a copy, keep a copy of your cards and things like that, so that if you need to, with your bank, if you need to tell them the number of your credit card or those types of things, that you have a record, and keep copies of your passport. That can be helpful. All right,
Definitely.
so I ran through all the questions. Sophie, I didn't let you answer any. I'm sorry, I just whipped, they were quick, and so I whipped right through because they were all local questions. Usually I handle the local questions and Sophia takes more of the train and tours types of questions. So sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
As long as the questions get answered, that's what's important.
All right, perfect. Well, it looks like we've tackled all the questions for today. So thank you for joining us. And if you have any more questions, please do come over to the ItaliaPass community. It's very easy to find. It's community.italiapass.com, and you can ask any additional questions there or reach out to our traveler experience specialist if you're an ItaliaPass member, and they can also help you out. Have a wonderful trip to Rome.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good trip.